And we're on the air, right. It's the last of my election streams, the final finale. Not quite time for the election yet, but certainly the last one I'm going to be doing on the election. I thought I'd bring some old faces, some old friends back onto the channel. So I have some random geek. I've got Troy, who I've labelled as Wolf actually in the thumbnail, but ignore that, he's Troy. And Teglin, how are we all today?
Well, all right for the most part, but like I'll say it like that. I could go on further and like explain like that thought process of how I answered the question of how am I as well too. But like neurospiciness, I would just say I'm alright for now. I just want this election to be over as well.
Well, indeed. We were going to have one more guest. Lapa's going to be joining us, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. All best to her. Still very much a friend of the channel, just not here for the time being. She'll be back at some point. Anyway, we're going to have a nice stream today. Hopefully it'll be nice and chill. Won't be too... I want to sort of split it into... obviously talk about the election and stuff, but also just a catch-up, because it's been a while since I've had a chance to speak to all of you in one go. So touching on what you were saying, Geek, because it's very much how I'm feeling as well. The election is just something hanging right in the foreground at the moment at this point. It's been a long old process. I remember back summer thinking, wow, it's so close, and yet here we are a few days away from the election. It's about to happen. It's such a moment. It's such a pivotal moment in history, right? And we're living through it. How does that sit with us? How does that make us all feel?
There was like times like in high school, because in high school, in my sophomore year or something like that, no, senior year, 9/11 happened that sort too. And it's just like, wow, I'm living through history. The 2008 crash happened. Wow, I'm living through history. The previous presidential elections. Wow, I'm living through history. And I was just like, can I just not live through history at some point? It's just like, I can sit down in my old age and say and put on my fedora and have my whiskey glass. It's Kool-Aid, don't worry. And go, I was there when the 2024 election, and despite what all the liberals were saying about how I must vote for Kamala Harris, I actually did it because my vote for the presidential election and the general election doesn't really matter in Washington State because it's this thing that we call the Electoral College. Come on, children, let me tell you about how undemocratic the Electoral College is. Yeah, so I did vote for the rest of the races. Down the line, I voted Democrats or whatever the most progressive candidate was. The vote was usually Democrats. But for the general election, I went for the third party. I honestly forgot who I picked. It wasn't Cornel West. It wasn't Jill Stein. It was I know the Socialist and People's Party candidate as well too. I forgot because if my vote mattered, I'm in one of the swing states, then I would consider voting for Harris and probably would begrudgingly. Otherwise, just I still wanted to see what Kamala Harris does about Gaza and Palestine, and once she's finally president. Right now, she probably can't say anything or do anything to rock the boat because she's the vice president to Biden, and we all know Biden's position on Israel and Palestine as it is too. He's a scientist, and it's about that.
Optimistic saying when she's president. That's
yes.
It's the hopeful view, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's always a chance that that Trump could win it, and also it's election is on Tuesday, but we won't know who's the president on Tuesday because this long process is going to be weeks, and we probably still won't know who's president unless it's a blue wave for Kamala Harris, which might be possible. So, how's everyone else feeling about the election?
Just even from all the way in Australia, it's it is nerve-wracking. It just brings back memories of the concerns I had, and at one stage when I was kind of in that centrist position 2015, I probably wouldn't have voted either way, but I always thought, okay, which side is going to be the is going to cause damage? Is it going to be a far the evil communists? Stalinists, or is it going to be Hitler or whatever? But I'm starting to get concerned that the biggest threat to the Western democracy is indifference and nihilism. That might be a a threatening force, because I think the Democrat Party itself, and I saw that in the primary elections in 2020, just the whole process was just so disappointing, the way that it played out, the way that the MSNBC and all the news outlets, the way they were kind of biased against, the more progressive candidates, and just with the idea that, let's vote the lesser of two evils, and even on Twitter there was a thing trending saying we'll vote for a diet Hitler instead of a full Hitler, and I'm thinking, okay, is that the best we can do? And during the primary election as well, like, all I heard them saying was, we're not Trump, and you don't get a cookie just because you're not your skin's not orange. That's not the way the world operates. Like, how about getting people excited for I miss that sense of excitement or optimism you get from some of the Democrats that I've seen in the past. Like, even though I haven't agreed with them, at least they had some kind of populist energy, and so I'm just concerned that a lot of people won't show up, and they don't have to. Whereas in my country, it's compulsory to vote, or else we get a $50 fine. Which some Americans that I know, I think like a right-wing libertarian friend of mine, he absolutely fell off his chair when he found out like what the law is over in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like the lack of optimism, the lack of excitement. I suppose that's the consequence of living under late stage capitalism. I think Teglin's internet, by the way, has just dropped. We're having a few setup issues behind the scenes, so hopefully Teglin will be back in a second. But yeah, like the lack of like energy, I feel like that things are. There's obviously there's excitement from some people, like perhaps the diehards in either party are really excited, but beyond that, just a feeling of we've got to our Teglin's back, fantastic. We've got to vote to stop democracy falling apart, or we've got to vote for the least bad option, or we've just got to hope things don't get any worse and just keep going on.
Yeah.
And there's, like you say, there's none of the wow, I'm voting for someone who I believe is going to really make things better. There's like a general acceptance that there's just climate change is going to happen, and the economy is never going to get better, and that capitalism is going to keep rolling into each crisis, further and further and further along. And I suppose that's one of the challenges. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, so Geek, why don't you? Because you're the American here, so
Teglin's also American.
Bring the Teglin, American as well. Like, bring the democracy sausage into it. Maybe that'll get people more excited about
No, believe me, learning of the candidates. Well, we do have some of those joke candidates. There is Vermin Supreme. He always tried to run for the Libertarian Party as well too. That's the guy with the boot on his head. And he says one of his things as a platform is like free ponies for everyone. When asked how are you going to pay for that, he goes, "What do you not understand about the word free?" So now.
You don't really want that. I don't know how it would work with the type of sausages we have, because it's like the sausage we have like on a square piece of bread with butter and just like laid diagonally. It's not like a hot dog. It's like, think of it as like that you got to cook it really, really like for a long time. Basically, like it's just going to be like the Freddy Krueger dick pic on a piece of bread. Sorry to be crude.
We're here to talk about election, but now in my mind is that the Freddy Krueger dick pic is in my mind. But now I'm happy about that because, I don't know.
That's how well they have to be cooked. So maybe Americans need to have maybe the hot dog stand. It needs to be tied in with the election, and come and have a hot dog and come vote.
So, Tanglin, what do you vote on for your hot dog monuments for the U.S. election?
Did either the Republican or the Democratic candidate come out and say that they were going to advance healthcare, or what is Kamala's healthcare platform? I think I read something from Bernie Sanders that said the research shows 68,000 Americans would die each year from preventive causes if they had health insurance.
Yeah, I've read like the entire Democratic Party platform, which, despite the fact that it was like final draft in like August of 2024, that was the date on there. That was after Biden stepped out of the race. Again, he didn't step down from president, step out of the race. The document was still said like 13 times in Biden's second term, and it killed me to no end as I was reading it on stream. It's like, Biden's not going to have a second term. Biden's not going to have a second term. But it's like, but according to that document of the Democratic Party platform, someone on Blue Sky linked to me to their document about like Kamala Harris like policies. I don't know if I have any interest in reading that either on my own or on stream. But from what I've read at the Democratic Party platform, I was going through that section where they talked about like healthcare services, and that's what well, just constantly yelling, "Medicare for all, Medicare for all, Medicare for all." But yet there was also like someone that like did mention about that. She is a disabled person, and she said like even Medicare, if like we have it for all, like a universal like Medicare, or it's like remember that Medicare is just like medical insurance. It's like it's better than like nothing, but yet it's still weak in that like it's like kind of ableist for those who actually interact with it and have to like use it as well too for like disability services and that sort of thing too. So even with Medicare for all, yeah, okay, this friend said Medicare is still ableist as fuck and would not significantly impact disabled or chronically ill people. And yes, I've been like dealing with Medicare since I was 17, so I have direct experience for myself. They don't care about, and then referring to Democrats, they don't care about Medicare as if it doesn't help people in need of support. No Medicaid. It doesn't reduce stress points for patients either, if you're wondering. So it's I guess it's kind of like more the same from the Democrats, or maybe there was like. But the thing with the Democratic Party platform is sure like any like document of like here's Kamala Harris's like policies, campaign policies. Remember the campaign? They're just promissory notes. They're almost like IOUs. I base it off of like their actions as were too.
I suppose as well that because the Democrats are ultimately a centre-right neoliberal party, right? They believe in the system, and the system, unfortunately, is a right-wing capitalist free market solves your problems sort of system. But they run against a party which is increasingly, well, I say increasingly, but is just fascist at this point, right? Like there's so many clips of senior Republicans and people at the heart of the Trump campaign, basically like frothing at the mouth to get rid of any form of healthcare option that's not for like private insurers, to put people off anything remotely Democrat, to change the way that America views its various systems and organizations. And when you run against that takes so much of the limelight that the Democrats almost don't have to put as much scrutiny on the fact that they don't actually lean that much to the left, that they're increasingly sort of being dragged right on a few issues. And it's a shame because there's so much support in the world, basically, but especially in America, for those left-wing changes. I mean, you only have to look at the efforts that Bernie Sanders is putting into trying to put things into movement, and the constant effort of left-wing organizers and activists in states across America, to actually get the ball moving on these things. And if they, part of the frustration is that they're doing it, but part of the frustration is also that there's not and it's natural really, there's not the media coverage for these issues. And part of that is having to analyse it through our anti-capitalist lens. There's a conservative interest in right-wing media outlets not airing discussions of Medicare for all or taxing the rich and stuff, because the more you do that, the more scrutiny that gets applied to people who fund the same media. But here we are, right? A few days away from the election. The conversation is so much on here's the threat of the far right, but not enough time is said to actually here's some things we could do which are more left-wing and could be better. It's frustrating.
Yeah, because I heard this comparison because a lot of the public, they care about you know, healthcare, that's like probably a huge thing, and being able to afford to live in. The Republicans will just say, you know, fuck off, and then the Democrats will tell you to fuck off, but then they'll wave a rainbow flag while they tell you to fuck off.
Mhm.
I don't know how accurate that is.
I think that it speaks to the very corporate entity at the heart of American society, which sadly the Democrat Party are also involved with. Because, like, whilst Republicans are very much a party of these massive corporations, there's a reason Elon Musk and every other billionaire, you know, wants the Republican Party to win and write off any of their tax and basically turn America into an even more right-wing oligarchy than we see today. But because those market forces exist across all of society, unfortunately, they have their I don't know, use the word tentacles because it is a bit of a negative associated imagery with that sort of analogy, but like they have influence in the Democrat Party as well. And so the sentiment that you see here from Harpskid, for instance, who says our bombs have a trans flag, look how progressive we are, is just that. They're happy to have a liberal.
Exactly it.
They're happy to have like a very liberal understanding of, well, you know, we've got equality and everyone can do these things, and it doesn't matter if you're LGBTQ or black or whatever, you can access these things. And then we'll engage in the same harmful market practices that kill people in the Middle East, or don't get people on healthcare at home, or don't fund things using public resources. Like, there's still that right-wing ideology at the core of it. It's just how much right-wing do you want? But at the same time as that, the trans flag is a good example, because the Republican Party are so fascist and so right-wing, so far down that pipeline that LGBTQ people are in the crosshairs, women's rights in the crosshairs, black people in the crosshairs. Like, there's no doubt about it. They 100% want the white supremacist, patriarchal, cis heteronormative society that they've been clamoring for a very long time, right? Like, there's that dichotomy of both parties, as Stonebutt says, both parties serve capital, but one of them has also lurched into full-out fascism, which makes them so much more of a threat, or so dangerous.
Okay, so how's my audio? I'm very sorry, people. I honestly thought StreamYard was picking up my Yeti microphone, so when I clicked the, you should not be able to hear me, and so it said it was picking up my webcam microphone, which is right here in front of my keyboard. So it's very sorry for the clacking of the keyboard. I swear to.
No problem, geek. Happens to the best of us.
And the celebrity, all of these celebrity endorsements, is that really helping with the campaign? Because it's because the celebrity types, they just seem so out of touch. Like, the only people I ever listen to stand-up comedians. Like, they're the only ones that I would ever listen to about advice, because they have a little bit more knowledge of the everyday people. But
yeah,
I can't stomach celebrity.
Go on, geek. You go first.
I don't know, because like I honestly, at this point I don't know if, like, well, as well too with the, like, the third party voters, or like the undecideds, they're the undecideds are now seem to be just a very narrow group of people that are just, like, you know, white moderates or white suburbanites as well too, and those are the people that, like, both parties are kind of trying to court. Even though, well, the Thuggins, I will call them Thuggins, fascists, they will be the ones that just, like, go after the far right of their base and, like, do that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree with, like, Stonebutt said. So, like, celebs might motivate a few votes, so it's like maybe more libs than, like, conservatives, since, like, Dons are roaming at the mouth of Trump as well too. Yeah, the Trump's never going to lose their base support at all. And, like, it's like the election, it always seems to be decided on, like, a very small group of, like, white supremacist people who somehow are undecided or are just, like, very distant from politics as well too. So maybe if Taylor Swift does, like, endorse Kamala Harris, that will work on things. I don't know.
I suppose the liberal angle of it, I think, is so important, right? Like, it's a very liberal vision of society. Oh, here are some celebrities. Here's Beyonce. Here's LeBron James. These people support.
Chappelle Roan kind of question the Kamala's campaign and say, you don't necessarily have to vote Democrat or Republican, and got a lot of backlash for that, right?
Yeah, which I think that's something interesting to come on to actually. So I put a pin in that one, Teglin. But in terms of like the point about liberals, like there's a very like as Stoneblock says, like there is that there's these people that I enjoy the work of, support or want you to vote for Democrats, so I'm going to be more likely to. But it does feel very like because society is so polarized, I feel like it is a very firstly like who's going to be swayed by that, and then secondly as well, like people are a bit cynical of liberal visions of society at this point. Like I feel like someone who has $1 billion coming, like Beyonce, coming on stage and saying, "Yes, come on, let's vote Democrat," like that wasn't going to tip you over the edge because the reason you're voting Democrat is probably, wow, the Republicans want to destroy American democracy. Like, but to come on to your point, Teglin, I think Chappelle Roan taps into a lot of the frustration that people my age, and I don't know how old you are, Teglin. You have to say if you don't want to. But I'm 26. I'm Gen Z to be British. And there's that general like dissatisfaction with society that like basically is in the whole generation, right? Like people are on housing markets with no chance of ever really owning a house, working lots of jobs for very little money to be able to even afford rent and food and stuff, live with climate change just like right happening around us. I mean, you only have to look at what happened in Spain the other day in Valencia, where like 200 people have died basically because of like flash floods, or in on the east coast of America with a hurricane that is happening, and our politicians aren't doing enough to really stop it. Like there's a general like just discontent for society, right? And then you get someone like Chappelle Roan who doesn't, who's relatively new to the scene and basically says, yeah, this is a bad system. Like this is not, you don't have to be overly for these parties which aren't doing enough to solve our problems. But because of the nature of this election, where one party is so much further right than the other one, is such a threat to like society and just general positive things in general, like it is translated through that lens of, wow, if you don't vote for Democrats, then you support Republicans happening. If you don't 100% support Kamala Harris, that is interpreted as you are a Trump supporter, which I think because of the nature of social media and because of how like news media turns every little thing into like, I don't know, Kamala Harris yawned, therefore we're now, we need to have Trump as president and stuff, like silly things like that. Because of how silly a lot of politics analysis is, it makes it harder to see a quote that actually isn't that bad and interpret it as, oh, Chappelle Roan is basically saying, don't care about the election and just let Trump win because it's not good. Like it's a tricky discourse to unpack in such loaded times, I feel. And that's the case for a lot of young people, I think.
I love the comment that was left by Harpskid. It was the talking about like anything but class analysis and then improving working conditions, but then focusing on culture war division tactics. And it's like the idea, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's like, because like we don't necessarily have to be class reductionist. It's like, because like identity politics, that's like important. It is like, and just about everybody practices it in their everyday speech, no matter, even if they're aware of it or not. And so you can focus on both things, but there's also like a cynical version of identity politics. I think that's what people are opposed to, not identity politics itself, but this cynical kind of commercialization of it. And it ran rampant during the especially when Hillary Clinton was campaigning, like when she was up against Trump. It was done in a very, very cynical way. It's almost sort of shaming women, saying, you're a woman, so you should vote for a woman. And Kamala Harris was trying to go that angle, but I think they've already seen too much of that kind of cynical approach. So even the like the most radical of feminists, they're pushing back. They're saying, no, it's like you don't get a pass just because you have the same gender as me. Like, I need to see what your policies are, and so that speaks to me a lot, that comment.
Yeah, like there's a lot of I think the Hillary Clinton campaign is quite a good case study in sort of the complacency of liberals and specifically the neoliberal like people who are in charge of the Labour Party in the UK for a very long time. But just that assumption that the society's all fine and there's no like discontent with the system because we're in charge and everything's running along smoothly, and look, we have a first female president. Yes, isn't society great? And then people think actually, well, this isn't really working for us, and Trump wins. Though it is worth pointing out, and I think that's another thing to come on to, even like because we're so hinged on elections and specifically a very bad electoral system in the US, like it confuses an election win for like majority success because people don't like the Republican Party whatsoever. There's no like outside of Trump's like cult and the fervent conservative movement, like there's no like overwhelming support for the things that party want to do. Even when they won in 2016, right? Like they lost the popular vote, they won swing states by very close margins. Like it's not as though that translates to like an overriding like here is the future for society we want. It's a bad system, but it's one that has been maintained for a long time by the liberal and neoliberal like institutions that have been governed by people like Hillary Clinton, right? Like, can you imagine the timeline if in 2008 Obama had said, actually, with my supermajority, we're going to change the fundamentals of our society and actually move things to a better place? We wouldn't have had Trump because they'd have put things in place that were popular and, for one, changed voting systems so you don't rely on awful Electoral College to put fascists in place, right? So the fact that he didn't do that because he's part of that same liberal like establishment believing in neoliberal capitalism shows that, as Harp's kid said, there is just this decline, there is just this like broken method of organizing society that just slowly devolves into further and further right-wing systems. But this moment now, like Kamala Harris, as you say, Troy, hasn't lent as much into that sort of identity first angle. I think because they saw the Hillary Clinton campaign not do it very well, but also because I feel like there is some awareness from people in the party that actually this election has to be really, really, we have to win, right? We cannot lose this one because Trump is such a threat and the Republican Party are such a threat to the way they leave it as such things. So like they almost like, a lot of it has hinged on Trump is really bad.
Yeah,
because they know.
So I feel like I really owe like everyone and the chat as well, just like sort of a further explanation of some of the things that I might have said. So I always distinguish between like identity politics, which those things are important because there's a lot of social issues and there's a lot of groups that are marginalized, and then there's the commercial cynical version of so the good and the bad. So
like
the one that I talk the most is exactly what it is, the rainbow capitalism. And the reason that it's popular is because it's so easy. It's so easy to have the words to say, okay, I support this, I support that, but then you have to actually show up.
Yeah.
And that's when they're put to the test.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's just like I'm not gonna like call any like a class first leftness or like any like Marxist Leninist like crass reductionist as well too. I wanted to like see that class analysis is definitely very important, but like I would like also like it if people like stand up for like trans people or stand up against like white supremacy and racism. I see people doing that like either out of Black Lives Matter protests or like protesting against the genocide happening in Palestine or something like that, then I'm all for that. Brocialists have always been a thing, which it is the thing of Fortress, and some self-called anarchists are also just like have their regressive views on things too. Well, even historical anarchists. Pierre Joseph Proudhon was a patriarch. That's why Joseph Dissatisfaction distinguished himself by calling himself a libertarian, and criticized Pierre Joseph Proudhon for like being a patriarch as well too. And yes, Mikhail Bakunin also has some like anti-Semitism and racism because like that was the thing. So yeah.
It's
intersection. Oh, go on, Troy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, people aren't, if you belong to any sort of marginalized group, and you know, you might have had things tough it's like you're not going to remember somebody who's like on the ivory tower saying all of these things and saying these platitudes. Like what they're going to remember is what people have done and how they've actually showed up, like when it really counts. You know, it's almost like the fair weathered friend. I mean, it's like you remember the friends who were there for you when, you know, times were tough. You know, not just the ones who were spewing all these nice positive messages. It's like the live, laugh, and love that's, you know, displayed in the house, and then like those same people are a toxic family.
Yeah, and I think Stonemuck makes an important point actually. Like there is that intersectional lens, which I think is like when you know we sort of analysed the elements of society that need to be analysed alongside our class analysis, and I think to give Hillary Clinton and her campaign some you know, props, like ultimately, whilst it was flawed, like it was still better than what Trump had to offer, and like it still would have.
Yeah.
It is still. I think it is still. Because Harpskid makes a similar point as well. Like there is still some value in a system born of patriarchal norms to have a female president. Like the fact that people beyond cis het white men can be president or political office and stuff is still an achievement. It's just that it needs to be one using our analysis of the structures of society that digs deeper, because the average woman is not going to be any better if we just keep going down the neoliberal path, but the person in charge of cutting social services or enforcing the border stronger is female, right? Like we need to be looking at the intersectional ways that capitalism has problems so we can break down sexism, racism, anti-LGBTQ, anti-disability, every form of societal oppression and injustice, so that society is better for everyone. And part of that is, though, also recognizing the defense of patriarchy and racism and all things that's listed from the far right, from the Republican Party. Because one of the things that I've seen quite a lot of in the last few days is an advert of like a woman goes to the ballot box by herself, or she votes without her husband present, and she's voted for the Democrats, not Republicans. And some people were saying that, oh, you know, this isn't realistic. And then a lot of Republicans went on podcasts and stuff and were saying, like, well, this is why you know, men should really be in charge of a household, and this is why you know, women should just be listening to their husbands. And you realize, actually, no, there's a really vocal conservative movement to basically undo all the progress across several different movements. Right, there's a very vocal opposition, and I think they've picked now as the time to try and do it, because they know there's fascism in the air, right? They've got an opportunity to undo decades of civil rights progress and of social progress. And so, to some extent, actually, there was some truth in the election being about various social issues. Like, for as much as it's important to recognize the limitations of the Democrat Party, like there is also some truth in this moment being particularly prescient and important because of the sheer malice in the other party, right?
This is what I said on like social media. No, don't get me wrong. I hate the fascists of the GOP party, the Thuggins, for many different reasons. The more central ones that they want me and my friends to be dead, and they want to take they want to take away people's control of their bodies, like abortion rights and that sort of thing too. But like, one thing that always calls me is like, I hate how my vote matters, they have forced me to vote for the Democrats, which is a pro-genocide like party, but yet it's like you're not voting for. So people are not voting. Like Jessie Gender put out the video of why leftists should vote, and she has lost a lot of subscribers. And there's I heard some things about what some things she has said that like people have criticisms of. Not that like she said something outlandish that like needs her to be canceled or anything like that, but yet like it's disheartening to her of how poison the well the discourse is amongst leftists in leftist circles about how of the anti-electoralism kind of rhetoric. I can kind of sometimes fall into that, and for me it's just like, and like something that I wanted to bring up on previous streams. Anarch has a couple of videos, one he made in the summer called like "Voting Doesn't Matter." He also said that not voting doesn't matter as well too. But that's is on this anarchist critique about the whole system of like elections and representative democracies and how they all just tend to slide into fascism. And I also agree with him that like I argue, and he makes this another point in another video that he responded to ContraPoints on elections and voting, and where it's just like voting. No, what matters more, I think, is more direct action, more praxis, more like building communities and of mutual aid, or building solidarity amongst people in your community, or the people that are more marginalized, like the unhoused, or like the homeless, or like anyone in need as well too. And that's why I think it's just like, if you want to vote, go ahead, vote. Don't let me stop you, and vote how you want. I won't judge you on like who you vote for, except if you vote for the Thuglikins, the fascists, because like I would definitely judge you there. But if you vote for a third party, you vote for the Democrats, like I won't judge you either way. Like for Jessie Gender being a trans woman, she votes for the Democrats, votes for Kamala Harris, and would. If she can tell people like who to vote for, she probably does say vote for hers, especially in swing states. I don't know her exact statement, but as for someone like her, a trans person, to have health care, and I just again, I will still hate it that like I have to just decide. Well, one thing is like on the issue of Palestine and genocide, there is no way for us to vote for a non-genocide candidate that has a chance to win. We can vote for Jill Stein or Kamala Norris or whatever the third party is, but they really don't have like a chance to win in the first past the post, like winner take all, and with the Electoral College. So it's just like I don't know how to like not poison the well on this sort of thing. Oh yeah, stone butt. No, not a good one. Start the radicalize your workplaces. It's another action that one can like take. That I say will take more in. That does a lot more to change the world other than voting. But again, voting should really only take 10 minutes. Okay, here's my ballot. Here are the candidates. I'll do my research, what their stances are like. Do this candidate say something about like $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all? Okay, this candidate does. Okay, there we go. Done.
And no sausage to show for it.
Maybe more people would vote if they get a sausage for it, or cupcake, or a brownie. You voted today. Here's your brownie.
And that require people to actually give things back to people, and sadly, that's not the ethos of a lot of states in America, right?
But I think
it's another point. So go ahead, Troy. Just bit my lip.
Yeah, it's I think everyone's got there's some perspective they got, because because I often hear geek. There's like a lot of friends who are struggling, so that obviously influence thinking, maybe I should vote. It's and then I know that like Owen, like you work in a profession like where there's like in education, and I work in the disability care sector, and so because of that, like that's kind of at the back of my mind whenever I vote. Like in my elections, I just think, okay, like for me, so I think about the people that I work with, like in the disability services, and I just think, okay, if I vote this way, like how will this funding be cut down, and etc. And there's obviously a lot of problems, even when you got like a slightly more left-wing government, but sometimes that conflates to bureaucracy as well. So that's my biggest problem with education, is that I've seen it in Australia. It's very, very bad. The bureaucratic systems that are up there, that when they channel a lot of funding into education, usually it means that they've got a nicer building for the executives, for the people in charge. Like it doesn't necessarily filter down to the classrooms. Whereas I'm glad they kind of changed the disability sector so that the funding goes straight to the like participants or clients. And so they get to choose what services they use. And so that means the service providers, they have to be kind of competitive in certain ways, and they have to do the right thing. I think competitive is probably the wrong word in that sector, but they have to be very good at what they do. Like don't do a half-assed job, or else they'll choose somebody else to go to.
Yeah. And I think that ties into that point, Troy. This comment here, which I read from Harpskid. He doesn't believe in voting for the Democrats can be justified. And I think whilst I completely, based on all the things you said, based on, like you said, the bureaucracy, and based on all the the clear, legitimate reasons to be disdainful of our current system. Unfortunately, we are also in that system, and as our ancestors have been, as their ancestors have been for many, many generations. And I suppose, whilst I am absolutely a critic of all the things and would not be endorsing anyone, to me, there is still a pragmatic need to be able to, live in this world, right? Because the capitalist system will continue after this day and to the election and to January. And of course, we live in hope that one day things will change and there'll be like a societal shift to a more left-wing system. But in the meantime, I think it's important to try and make sure, like, as you said, Troy, like for the institutions that people interact with, like, I mean, I look at education and I look at the Republican plan for education, and I'm not saying that Democrats are running it perfectly. Absolutely not. We need to have more funding and stuff. But the right-wing vision of education is one which is fundamentally inaccessible for millions of children. And their plan for education is, like, it really does terrify me as someone who, safeguarding is quite a thing I interact with quite a lot. It's, as any educational involved person will do, it's something quite at the heart of a lot of just day-to-day workings in schools. And the plan from that party is basically to get all of that and replace it with, like, I don't know, your local pastor is now in charge of administering all the stuff in your school. Forget counselling or a safeguarding authority or body to regulate things and check. Just leave it to Pastor Bob. And if Pastor Bob believes that gay kids don't exist, then too bad. You off to the re-education camp. I mentioned it on a different stream. I don't know if anyone's here has seen The Sopranos, one of my favourite shows. But in one of the episodes of The Sopranos, spoilers if you haven't seen it, there's a mobster who happens to be gay, and obviously the mob don't like this, so he ends up getting killed. And it turns out he has a son, and the son is like gender non-conforming. They like dye their hair, they've got like makeup on and stuff. And this is like a big hang up for the family because obviously they live in like Mobville. It's causing issues in their social circles. And so Tony Soprano is meant to fund, pay your family a little money to go off and basically start again in a different part of the country and just like be away from their family as it's causing them embarrassment, but start again afresh. Tony gambles away this money in this episode. He's got a gambling problem at this time in the show. Gambles away the money, and so he just pays, like, on the cheap, some like Christian fundamentalists to come and take the son away to like gay conversion camp, where we then never see him again. The son's off there. And as awful and as hyperbolic as that sounds, that is the reality of what will happen in a lot of schools if the safeguarding authorities are basically rendered powerless in lieu of fundamentalist churches. Like there's and yes, thank you, Harpskid. I'll happily talk with Sopranos. Sopranos, The Wire, Deadwood, all of it. It's fantastic. But no, this little situation is what the Conservatives want for every school in America. It's what they want to basically gut the state education system and turn it into their like conservative, fundamentalist Christian camp, where schools are less a place of education and more a place of believe in the conservative Christian way. Get ready if you're poor. Sorry?
Indoctrination.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. If you're poor, get ready to work in a factory. Here are some quick things to make you docile and subservient. Obviously, education for the rich will be fine. They'll get all the access to like the computers and the sports facilities and stuff. But otherwise, you're on your own. And that's the danger, I feel, of essentially disengaging with elections, which unfortunately are a vessel for political power being transferred. And I think that's why, to me, there is still some importance in, even as we know the Democrats aren't a good party, still giving them some ability to beat Republicans politically anyway.
I don't know. It's just like, one thing is, I get frustrated sometimes with liberals, especially with how they vote shame like other people. I kind of wish that we can like go to a place where it's like who we vote for is kind of like a religious thing is private, and if that person wants to share that, which is always the case, they can share that if want. I do know someone that like is not voted at all, not even for local elections, because I've been friends with them for a long time. I occasionally I contact with them a lot in DMs. I get it for them. Their life is so shitty that like it does, and they live in a blue state, and they're not like in a red state in like enemy territory. No, they live in a blue state. But even like the social services in that blue state, they got their benefits back. It kind of took them to have to like call a crisis line or had like a police visit to prevent them from like ending their own life in order for that to happen. So again, for this particular friend, I don't blame them for not voting, and I'm not going to spend time or energy, which is it's time and energy for all of us is limited. Today people talk about the spoon theory, that a lot, and like people are autistic. Will talk about like social battery and that sort of thing too. But all of us like kind of had that too. It's just that like those who are able-bodied or like allistic, we have more of those reserves as opposed to disabled people and autistic people. But even then, the time and labor is like limited when we have free time, and I'm not gonna like try to like convince my friend to like go vote, even though I do think that local elections are very important. Like in many states, like in my state, Washington State, we had initiatives where you can actually directly affect laws, either repeal the current existing laws or create new laws as well too. And unfortunately, all the initiatives on the ballot for like Washington State were funded by rich billionaires and like multimillionaires assholes who, yes, like libertarianists, just hate taxes. No, literally one was like to remove a capital gains tax over $250,000. And yes, it said this if we did this, we will like decrease the funding for schools. And there, I have seen signs of people say, vote yes for this. And those like, no, all the initiatives were bad. It's also kind of confusing where it's just like you want to say yes because it's a positive thing, but if you say yes to this, you do a negative thing by repealing something or removing something. So it's I hope that like I hope that all the initiatives like don't pass, and also like voting for your judges on the federal level in the United States, it's all appointed, and like Mitch McConnell did his thing by like blocking several appointments as well too. Biden did like appoint a lot of like federal judges too, and of course there's the case with the Supreme Court, which is a lost cause at this point, unless like we expanded the Supreme Court, and I don't see Harris or Democrats willing to do that. They're not willing to play for death. But local judges can be voted on. And if you're one of those like people that have various leftist friends that are a lot of activists and do a lot of things too, and they were out of that protest and got arrested on Trump's up charges for like protesting for Black Lives Matter, of course, or Palestinian genocide, or being against Palestinian genocide. Yeah, I see you have an easier time of getting those charges dropped if like the judge you're sitting in front of is not an asshole. So it's just like, but yeah, I don't know. That was
I suppose to play devil's advocate to put my liberal hat on for a second, a liberal might say that Mitch McConnell might not have been in a position to put all those horrible judges in place and enable Republican control of various state legislatures and stuff. And even more presciently, the Supreme Court wouldn't have those conservatives if people had been willing to vote for the Democrats more, is what a liberal might say in response to some of that.
Because
like I think it's important. Like I agree that like vote unless, as you said earlier, right? Unless you've like voted Trump and you're like flying around like MAGA flags and like if you're actively some hateful individual, then yes, you should be shamed for having hateful politics. But I do think too much energy is devoted to like policing people of left-wing orientations when we should be putting that energy into making the system better and stopping right-wing harm being done. My concern, I suppose, is just that ultimately we do still live in a system which is presided over by politics that is determined on elections, and especially when it comes to that sort of thing. Like the reason blue states are better to live in, even the ones which have very flawed politics, like New York has some pretty dodgy Democrats in charge, right? And California's governor, Gavin Newsom, is not exactly the nicest man. But at the same time, those places enjoy a higher quality of life and have more, have a better standard of living and stuff, precisely because they've been blue and not red, like Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, and any other deep South red state where they basically let right-wing charlatans run the state, and it just becomes a nightmare. I mean, I don't even want to think about living in a place like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one now, like Alabama, where there's just like no, you've just let deeply religious, fundamentalist conservatives run the state, and they have like they're like bottom for every measure of human development in America. They like have the worst treatment of minorities. They don't do anything to address the structural failures of their state, literally roads falling apart and power outages and all of that. Like, there is still some value for me in engaging in a system and playing the game of sorts, because like, whilst of course it's not a fair game, but it's the game we've got to play, right? Speaking of games, we're coming up to the hour mark, so hopefully we'll be feeling less political in a moment. But no, I think there's like, to me, that's the tricky thing, I think, because in a few days' time, when this election happens, for me sitting across the pond in Britain, and I suppose you, Troy, the other pond on the other side of America, the other way.
Yeah.
Like, there is a global ramification for a Republican victory. Like, in our country, for instance, a party called the Reform Party, led by a man called Nigel Farage, won a lot of votes at the last election. They're very vociferous, very hostile and angry. And a lot of them are quite.
This is like the third party that's Nigel Farage is a part, because he was like first in UKIP, and then UKIP somehow became more racist than like he liked, and they joined the Brexit Party, created Brexit Party, and now he's in the Reform Party. And we also have a Reform Party here in the United States of America. Donald Trump was a part of that party as well, too.
Yeah, exactly. And before,
because our right wing parties, because our right wing, because we don't necessarily have like we got Labour and Liberal, like they're not inherently left or right wing. Sometimes they do change depending on what the issue is. Because I know that during the beginnings of the COVID pandemic or whatever, it's like even though it was a Liberal government, which is supposedly centre right, they did, like on that particular issue, they shifted to a more at the time it was a much more left leaning position. So it's a little bit more fluid. Like they're not as like deeply entrenched in like left or right or whatever. But if there's like the genuine, right wing policies, that's like, we've got an independent party called One Nation. So you've probably seen a picture, like you probably heard of Pauline Hanson. Like she's from my state, but yeah, she's got a very she can have a really sour look in her face sometimes. Like when you I don't know whether they edit it or something like that, the photos, but yeah, sometimes she can look very, very sour. And so she sort of capitalizes a little bit on the like when Trump was quite popular with some demographics or whatever, she was sort of capitalizing on that and sort of trying to use like similar tactics. But yeah, she's been doing that for a long time. It's just a sort of politician who a lot in common with Trump, just like very, very unfiltered. And it's and that's the thing about Trump as well. Like I preferred him when he was on the reality television, like as a popular culture figure. Like that was fun. Like that was a guilty pleasure. So I admit that I like that. But then I was thinking, why did he go into public service? That was that's just a loss to me.
Well, he's a showman, isn't he? He's very charismatic in the very first sense of able to hold their presence on stage.
He should have stayed there along with the Real Housewives and all the other. He should have just stayed in popular culture. And
but granted, I still think all the weird stuff about him would have still come out eventually, right? Like all the dodgy allegations, all that might still have happened. But I suppose he's a feature of capitalism, right? You've got, especially American capitalism too, like the showbiz and the glamour and the make it or lose it and the big show culture combined with the need to make money incessantly. And you get someone like Trump who is the fascist. He says, I will protect your capital to the capitalists. I will make sure we're all okay. And it's going to come at the expense of civil rights, labor rights, minorities, marginalized people, and it will come through the vessel of nationalism and ardent militarism and macho, I'm the big man, we're going to make America great, yelling and shouting. And the consequence of that is that things just get very vitriolic and nasty as a consequence, right?
Yeah.
So no, it's going to be an interesting few days. I mean, I must admit, election day, like, I hate them. I really don't enjoy election days. I've got a busy day anyway, so I'm not gonna, thankfully, be like just on my phone, like looking at all the things that happen. I'm going to be at university and at work, and I've got athletics on that day, so I probably won't look at my phone properly until right towards the end of the day itself, which will actually it'll be a little bit earlier than, because obviously Britain's ahead of America time-wise, so we will. When the polls close in the States, when the polls close?
It depends, because like with the election as well too, it's like the presidential election is the only election that like the entire country votes on, because everywhere else is like each state does their own thing. They really do their own thing. Like a vote by mail is not in every state. Sometimes polls, and sometimes it depends. Sometimes some of them close at 8 p.m. Some of them probably close at 10 p.m. Is like, and don't forget that like there's like the East Coast like polls will close at a certain time, and then the votes will come in. But like the West Coast will still be open because of the 3-hour difference. So it's kind of like we won't have an idea until like the California and polls are closed. Remember, California has a bigger population than Canada. Sorry, Canada. And also, like, they are the 5th largest economy in the whole world. Yeah. And so I honestly, and they're going to be counting well beyond like the election. Yeah, it's basically election day is not when like the president gets decided. Election day is when voting stops. And then it's going to be a long while before we have any clear idea of like who wins and stuff like that. And again, when you're watching the coverage of the election on either CNN, MSNBC, or Democracy Now, or something like that, or when the Associated Press will call state for Harris or for like Biden, that's when this like seems very certain like the other person doesn't have a chance to like win Washington State, for example, as well too. And yeah, that's the thing too. We vote for a president not by popular vote, but by Electoral College. It was a system to protect the slave states. That's all. So slavery still is like it's the original sin of the United States of America and genocide of indigenous people. Let's not forget that. Up until like today. And so yeah, it's going to be like a week or two before it could drag on until like next year until we finally figure out who like won.
It's going to be rough, right? Especially as there's a very eager effort to rig the election for Trump from the far right. There's
his lawyers
have been burned. There's states with dodgy electors been put in place specifically to allow Trump to get your nomination. You've got so much that can go wrong potentially in the next few weeks.
Trump has his like lawsuits prepared for like when he doesn't win, or like when he's going to challenge like the counts in like the swing states. So like Pennsylvania's probably going to be the next Florida, the next Ohio, where it's just like we're waiting on Pennsylvania as well too.
Yeah, it's quite alarming, really. I almost feel like it's like if Trump, if like on election day it's clear Trump's going to win, like that's it, right? But if the Democrats on election day, there's the actual winning the vote, then there's actually like getting the states to elect the electors to go and vote for the Democrats when it comes to that, and then there's the actual process of Biden handing presidency to Harris, right? Like, because you can imagine there's probably another January 6th like on the horizon where like the violence is ramped up and stuff. Not to mention people like Musk, who actively had a role, by the way, because we had some far right riots in the UK in the summer where they just basically showed up in a load of cities and smashed up buildings and tried to attack, people they suspected to be immigrants, aka anyone who wasn't white.
Yeah,
like, and Elon Musk was right there, like retweeting Tommy Robinson's BS and all of the far right provocateurs and stuff.
Like, I know this shouldn't really have a bearing because I've been preaching on about how people should focus on the real issues or whatever. But there's like when it comes to the election or the presentation of the president, you know, there's a certain optics that are there, and even like let's say it's like the Obamas, like they projected something that was appealing to both liberals and to even to conservative people, because the idea of showing like a family unity or whatever, because you saw the way that Obama and Michelle, how they both kind of exited after Trump won, and they were holding each other's hands. They seemed like the couple in love. So that's kind of an image they're selling to even to conservatives and liberals alike. Whereas with Trump, it was like, you know, he was the one who was winning, but it seemed very, very cold. And like the way that he was sort of relating to his family, there was a distance there. He was almost like, okay, stay away from me. And that was in stark contrast to the certain warmth that may have come from when like Obama was, you know, in presidency, where there was a certain regard for the optics, I guess, of like the family.
Yeah. Well, I think they're just like, part of it is Trump as an individual is just like a particularly selfish character. Like, obviously, like there's an element of
Yeah.
showbiz to it, but just from everything that he has demonstrated in public and behind closed doors and stuff, but he's just not a very present individual, which I think makes it much easier for like an Obama to stand out so much. Like, yeah, his optics are just much, you know, easier to get at because, you know, he's just a family man, right? But I suppose when the whole idea of optics is like it works through a time when, you know, where liberalism, you know, it's palatable for a while, but as society progresses and people get more aware of the failing like reality of the liberal capitalist system, you know, it doesn't work so much. So when Hillary Clinton like basically takes the baton from the Obamas and is like, yes, I'm the next Democrat president, we're going to beat Trump, it doesn't work as much strongly. People don't have the same reaction to it. And Biden, I think, because he was going against Trump first time and Trump was really wrecking the whole country, you know, 2020 was not a good year. The handling of COVID was abysmal. Like, so that made it so that Biden could win to some degree. And it was close. It wasn't quite as smooth sailing as obviously he won, but it was a close win. And because capitalism continues to plow on and people aren't getting, lives aren't, like, it's tricky because like Democrats do make things better than Republicans in the sense that like they run a liberal democracy better than Republicans do. But because that liberal democracy is a capitalist one and capitalism doesn't look after the people who live under it very well, people aren't necessarily going to feel like things are getting better, right? Because we live in a time of climate crisis and so many disasters. So it's tricky to sell optics continually.
Yeah, like can't we just get some pest control into the White House and just you know, spray it and just say, right, out with the cobwebs and just bring in some fresh blood, like some new ideas. It's because the parties, they seem to be the bipartisan system that I see, it just seems so resistant to change or to anything that upsets the status quo of their parties. It always has to be, because I've seen the way they reacted to, you know, a lot of people who potentially could have done very, very well in the Democrat Party. Like, I might not have agreed with them, but they had a certain vitality and freshness about them that I hadn't seen for a long time. But then it's like the old timers who are there, like they're so determined to protect their little bubble they're in that they push out anyone who has a dissident voice or even like, God forbid, they're actually you know, popular with the public and they gain like public interest. Like I've seen people like, you know, Andrew Yang, like I don't agree with him all the way, but he had a certain charisma that was there, and like I would have rather him than like some of the other Democrats that they were putting forward.
What do you think the minimum wage should be in the United States? I think it's $7.25. What do you think it should be, and do you think there's any hope that Kamala and the Dems will get it up to?
I think it should be Honestly, if we like the wages like match the progress of like production, so like we should be like $24 our minimum wage. And there's been the fight for 15, and that's still going. I think like once the $15 minimum wage federally happens, it's way too low. It should be like $20 at this point. But fun enough. I think Washington State is increasing their minimum wage to like $17, but in Seattle, where I work, my minimum wage this year, 2024, was increased to like $19.90, 97 cents an hour. So basically, at the beginning of this year, 2024, I got a raise. Basically, I was at $19.27 an hour, and then I started making $20 an hour at the beginning of the year. Not because I got a raise from work, because Washington, Seattle, so minimum wage should increase. I eventually
Yeah,
get a raise.
Well, so you should. I mean, because you know your shit. Like when it comes to your job,
Mhm.
you know exactly what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. The Stone Butt says like a $21 an hour minimum to meet like the 1986 minimum wage if we kept up with the top 1% price and income as well. So that's another way to do it. If the top 1% like it gets their like increase wages by like 300% or something like that, the minimum wage should also increase as well too. And also how we define the minimum wage as well too is not the minimum you get, but I think how it originally was implemented this is the minimum wage you need to be able to pay for all the things you need in order to like live. So the not only match should wages only match with like rates of inflation and then match those as if the inflation rates increase and like the wages increase, the increase in production will be nice, but also it matches with like cost of living, whatever it is, like food costs or rent or something like that. I would also honestly like a cap on like some of those like things, cap on rent for sure, because like I can understand the arguments of like capping on like resources or like energy or gasoline, something like that if like the price for gasoline stays low at a really dirt cheap like price for a long time, that people just do run on the gas stations and like store a whole bunch of like gasoline in their gas cans or in their plastic bags, like that one time in the South when like the gas prices was jumped up by like $1 or something like that. But at least with rent, because like especially when there's 6 times as many people as homes as there are unhoused folks still too, I don't see how like increasing the rent would like be that detrimental. If we capped rent, I should say as well too. So it's like
if anyone will allow a person to rent from them, because some landlords just pass around blacklists and things, and it can be really hard as a working person to pay rent, let alone get a place.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Stone Butt said, I remember arguing a minimum living wage and humane mind. Oh god, we remember humane mind. He's a narco-capitalist. Let's just say that. As he freaked out about how we're going to figure out a living wage for each country. It's like humane mind. Why do you worry about like other countries? And it's just like no, just like get people
county it says as well.
Yeah, I didn't see I didn't see eye to eye with him. Like I tried. I tried.
Yeah.
I did my best. But I couldn't.
But no, I mean, as we've all said, like minimum wage. Sorry, I'm just thinking of humane mind now. As we've said, like minimum wage, like it's bad that we need to basically tell capitalism to like put this in place, because if it was left to their devices, like the stuff would be given would be like less, like in those factories you see in China, in like the special economic zones where you live on site, you work on site, you get half an hour for lunch, half an hour at the end of the day, and your whole life's basically just being literally a person on the assembly line putting together the phones. Like it takes severely strict, severe the wrong adverbs to use, like extremely strict regulation to make sure capitalism is livable. And so minimum wage, for it to be like sensible, would require a huge hike in what it is at the moment, where it's like basically below even just renting like an apartment. You look at how, like you said, Tegan, right? When you can actually get a landlord to give you a place, like it's often really badly provided. And if it's one that you can afford, it's going to be one you have to share with loads of people. that's not very well maintained, and the landlord's got enough power to be able to continue this in place. Otherwise, you're out, evicted, gone. And I think that it's a terrible, terrible situation that a lot of people are basically relying on like minimal increases of minimum wage every few years, like to just about get on top and survive, as they're working like 2 jobs and splitting rent and food and stuff between like a host of people. Like, I mean, when I finish my studies, I'll not have the loan, not a grant, a loan. I'll say I have to pay back what I've, it's not quite as horrible as the American system, but I've still got to pay back the stuff I've taken from the government to come and study at university. But there's just the fact that our system is so unlivable, needs urgent reform and change, and it will at some point have to go beyond just minimum wage increases. It'll have to also be like rent controls and regulate like food control, energy control, like just basically reducing the impact of a free market on human rights, basically, which I think needs to happen, as was mentioned earlier by Harp's kid, like a radically different society.
Yeah,
it's how we get to that point, I suppose. And to me, it's going to be much harder pushing for that with the Republican Party who believe
just a like kind of a paradigm shift and just a rethinking about the way we approach our attitudes towards a lot of things. So for example, like the attitude towards education, like to be educated, does that mean that you need to go to a university, or is like there's other ways of education? Because I know in Australia, because that's how I got qualified to do the job that I do at the moment. Like, even though, yes, I had to have a degree to become a teacher and I had to have a maths degree to teach that discipline, but the work that I do at the moment, it required, like, it was basically called a certificate course. So it was like, let's say that it takes about 6 months out of a year and you get a certificate out of that. But that's becoming a lot more valuable because the professions that come out of those certificates are actually quite lucrative, like the trade work. So if you're becoming a boiler maker or a mechanic or a carpenter, they're making quite a lot of money for themselves. So that's sort of what's happening in Australia. Like, we're sort of rethinking, our attitudes towards education, where we're putting more value, like less so on the elite universities, which are important for some professions, but we're seeing the upward mobility of people who come from like the 6 month type of training. So it's not really a degree that you get, it's more of a certificate. And I had to undergo that, and then that includes the practical training as well, to have your little piece of paper saying that you can do this.
You mean education, like I think it should be. Oh, I can hear myself. No, I can't. Can I? No, it's fine. Right, that's fine. It's good. It's sorted. Education, I think, is so important in terms of like making sure everyone, like, it was so the victory that was making sure everyone had a basic human right to being able to do reading, writing, maths, all of that is so crucial. But as you say, people have different paths through their life, and not everyone is going to be right for entering university as soon as they leave school. And then look at me, I had to take some time between, leaving school. The first time I went to university, didn't quite work out. Here I am, my second attempt, and things are going quite smoothly. Like, so there's a different time for everyone to enter different paths of education. The society that enables this to happen, so that everyone's got A, access to good educational material, and B, a path in life wherever they choose, because like not everyone's going to want the same path through life, comes to one that isn't orientated around like a job market that you must get onto in order to be able to afford food, energy, a place to live. Like, I think that's like when people criticize university for not producing people to fit the job market, what they're missing is that the job market itself is a flawed and skewered like area of society that is heavily weighted by capitalist processes. So people having to get a degree to be able to access jobs that make it like make you be able to afford the stuff you need to live isn't like the issue. Is that people need to get the money in the first place, not the act of getting more knowledge and education, which is a good thing. It's good for people to be educated. And you look at societies that have gone down this path of like commodifying education and increasingly marketizing like the service and stuff, and the quality of the education has gone massively down. Like you only have to look at like the university I attend, like laid off loads of stuff, and that's not good. That's actively worsening the education your country's providing. But because it's all just market driven, it's like, well, these people are just an expense we're spending on. Just get rid of them. Sad.
Yeah, I could like sit here and like rant about like capitalism and markets and the whole of the thing as well too. And like honestly, if people just like still want markets but like don't want the capitalism thing, there are ways to do markets like without capitalism. There's mutualism, where it's just like all the cost of living stuff. All the cost of living, all of the necessities of life as well too. Food, water, like housing, healthcare, education, and transportation, or at least access to education and transportation. That's out of the market. No, everyone's like guaranteed that as well too. The markets there are just for the luxuries as well too, like the extra pair of shoes or the extra like fancy coders like that, or like the piece of art as well too, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like again, we can like rant about this thing for like as long as possible, and it's just like now how to get there is a great question. I wish I had the answer to that too, because like I have my ideas of narco-syndicalism, but like even it's not gonna like happen overnight either, because Rome wasn't built in a day, and these things do take time. So
I
it's like
always go back to. Sorry, did you finish, Geek? I just cut you off then.
We just try to do the best that we can. I wish I could do more activism, as I always say. It's because of imposter syndrome. I imagine like activist is someone who's out on the streets on the megaphone, or like throwing a Molotov cocktail or freedom potion towards a police car, but yet, or at least be a street medic as well too. But I gotta remember, but that's like organizing or organized like unions and that sort of thing. But not everyone has the talent to do that, and I have to recognize that. I just work as many hours as I can at my job, when I can, and any extra money I give to my disabled friends that I constantly tweet about, or try to remember to tweet about regularly. Post on my social medias. It's like, even though it's like, here's money, I'll give you money, it's like, and it seems selfish, especially since I only do it to my friends. But then they're my friends. What good if friends if I doesn't help others when they're in need? I guess.
Well, indeed. Troy, I saw your brow furrow then. I think you're reading the same comment. I was just reading my eyes.
Oh no, don't no.
I'm not putting Damien's.
I'm looking at my brow. I'm looking at my brows, and yeah, they've got a life of their own. Like this is the.
Oh, they're lovely. I think
here's the Democrat, and this one's Republican.
I thought you were for a second reading the comment that's been left by Damien, which I'm not going to show.
Oh, okay.
This. I have no idea how you found my channel, Damien, but yes, I think this is quite the Trump 24. Damien says, "Well,
Trump's a fascist."
Well, indeed, I think you're on the wrong channel, Damien. But no, I think there's for me the push left is an ongoing fight, right? But we only have to look. You imagine the slaves in like 1850, whatever, thinking, "Wow, life is awful. What are we going to do?" And I read a fantastic book. I've plugged it a few times on this channel because it's one of my favorite books. But it's called "The Half Has Never Been Told," about the history of slavery in America, and how black people could just exist in such awful times. How life kept going, and they kept on. They resistance was existing for a lot of them. And just existing, making sure that their successors, their children, were going to know that things were not okay and that things would change one day, was part of the fights that led to slavery being overturned, led to black people fighting in the Civil War and beating the slave-owning Confederate states. Existing through the dark days of Jim Crow and the Second World War and all of the fight against fascism, to the Civil Rights Movement, to overturning all the Jim Crow stuff. And paving way for now racism to be far less. Well, I say far less prevalent, far less structurally enforced than it was, as unbearingly so in the 1800s. Yeah, it's not that the meme is 150 years ago slavery ended, but that's not that long, right? There's people alive who lived in segregation, and their grandfathers were slaves, their grandmothers were slaves. So, to me, though the future may seem bleak, as long as we're alive and thriving, there's always going to be a chance for things to change for the better. I think there's always going to be a time, at some point, things will get better from the capitalist system. But even if we make it a small bit better, every little victory still counts, right? Every moment that like society is made a little bit better, it's still a moment for positivity and change. Right?
Do you feel that way? Like, because I know that you work in because you obviously work with people. I work with people. So does that kind of help you feel?
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly.
That you're kind of toning up in some way.
Yeah, like the success, the joy in other people is something that's so underrated. Like even just the small interaction that puts a smile on your face, like shows you that humans existing in society is something worth fighting for. Even if like for all the bad things that happen in our planet, there's also good.
Yeah.
And I think good existing shows that there is a better future for us if we fight for it.
That's perfectly because that's what I see. Like there's an essential goodness. Because the people that I work with, because if you're working in disability, there's so many different things you could be doing. Like some people will work with the more verbal clients, so people are a little bit more independent. But I don't know. I guess you find your niche, like the ones you'll get along with, the ones who'll respond to me the most. So the ones that I work with are the non-verbal and very high complex needs, etc. But the rapport that you build with them and just their recognition and just getting to know their personality that's kind of underneath that they can't really express through words is something that just reinstall, like it kind of brings back your faith in humanity, that there are people in this world who are capable of such, like just pure, like the purity of their emotions. Like that's the most profound thing I've experienced in like what I've done in the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, and I mean, the fact that disabilities are actually spoken about openly and there's, looking at people beyond just outdated, awful attitudes towards them. I think that is a really good example of like how society can change for the better and move, right? Like,
I think it's because there's a visibility, like people are we no longer have people put away in asylums or institutions or whatever. It's sort of they're allowed to go out into the community. Now they're seeing the work that support workers do and with clients do, and they see the interactions and they get to interact directly with people like that. They can see, okay, that's that's part of the change in the attitude. But I've heard of people who might like have outdated views towards that, but I'd challenge them to spend like a week in let's say it's one of the clients that I have, and then you'll inevitably develop a rapport with one or more than one particular client who's in that industry, and then you'd have to have like ice blood in your veins, like if you weren't like somehow affected if you worked in that industry for even for one day.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, and I think it's so important, like empathy, right? Empathy, understanding, a bit of recognition of humanity in other people. So it's coming up to the half-ish point. Teglin has left us quickly, and I think we'll end the live portion of the stream from here. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both and to Teglin a moment ago. It's been a pleasure listening to you all in the chat or reading some of the comments. Maybe not Damien's because I quite think Damien is.
It was nice. It was really it was good to see like Stonebutt again because I haven't spoken to him for ages.
Massive. We'll have to. I mean, I said to Stonebutt the other day, we'll do like a post-election thoughts. It'd be nice to sort of hopefully seeing what's happened in the aftermath of the vote and stuff, and it'd be nice to see
post-election clarity.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, the live part of the stream will finish here. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and fingers crossed America gets through this election.
We will one way or another, but like how well we'll do, we'll see. But fingers crossed, yes.
Okay, best of luck, America.
Yep.
Like I'll